Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through some of the noise and get to what's really important. Today, we're looking at some, well, pretty fascinating material. It's from a piece called Laughing Logic, The Fanatics of Confusion. And this source, it gets into two distinct groups. It uses these very specific labels, culturally rooted ones like and Bhakts and Chusslims.
Mhm.
It's examining their patterns of, let's say, extreme loyalty and what the source itself calls confusion.
Right. And our mission today for this deep dive is really to understand the characteristics, the common threads the source is pointing out about these kinds of behaviors, and maybe more broadly, what this might tell us about, critical thinking, how we consume information today. We're definitely focusing on the specific examples the piece uses to make its points. We're not here to endorse any viewpoint or, frankly, the labels themselves. It's more about the human tendencies the source seems to be getting at.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. The source starts off describing the first group, the one it calls and backs. It says they're like folks who believe their leader is half human, half Google. What really struck me here and where it gets deeper is how it shows the psychological strength of these really deeply held beliefs. Like it gives this vivid example. If the leader supposedly says, go eat mud, the reaction is apparently with or without masala, sir.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how the source uses that to highlight this unwavering loyalty. This isn't just about politics, really. It points to a broader human thing, rationalizing, conforming, especially when you have strong group identities. It feels like a classic example of how that sort of tribal loyalty can just override basic logic sometimes. The piece goes on to say that even if the economy crashed, they might call it a masterstroke.
Right. Or the other one.
Or if tomatoes cost more than gold.
Yeah, the response would be, at least onions are loyal. That line about the loyal onions, it's darkly funny, but it does sort of nail that tendency, doesn't it? To find any silver lining, no matter how absurd, just to defend a core belief. And, kind of ironically, the source notes this group loves data, but only when it's not from official government sources. That points to a very selective use of information, right?
Oh, absolutely. It really speaks to this deep need for coherence, for things to make sense, even if you have to build that coherence yourself inside an echo chamber. And what's striking is, okay, the target of the loyalty might be different between groups, but the underlying mechanism, that unwavering belief, even when evidence says otherwise, that seems pretty similar across different kinds of, well, uncritical thinking. Which brings us to how the source portrays the other group it labels, Chusslims.
Okay. So moving to the second group. The source describes them as, and again, this is provocative language, overconfident keyboard jihadis who skipped science class and majored in WhatsApp University.
Hmm.
Now, setting aside the label, what do you think the source is trying to highlight about the behavior there? Is it just overconfidence or something maybe deeper about how certain info spreads online?
I think it's definitely deeper, and it touches on a really important point about vetting information. The source gives an example, like if you ask them why they believe some video from, say, 2012, the response might be because it has dramatic music and Urdu captions. Must be true. Which, I mean, vividly illustrates a breakdown in checking sources, doesn't it? Where the emotional pull or these superficial markers, they just replace critical thinking. And this is often linked to what the source kind of jokingly calls WhatsApp University, this reliant on viral, unverified stuff from social media as your main source of truth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The piece also calls them global citizens of global confusion, suggesting they might get offended in India if someone sneezes in France. It seems to highlight a sort of hypersensitivity or maybe connecting unrelated things through one specific lens.
Indeed, it touches on how easily narratives, especially emotional ones, can just spread like wildfire online, crossing borders, often without much factual basis. Both groups, the source describes, really, in their own ways, they highlight how easily confirmation bias and groupthink can take hold, especially when critical thinking gets pushed aside for loyalty or maybe just that immediate emotional hit. And this isn't just some niche thing. It's a challenge we all face in this super-connected digital world.
So we've looked at these two, well, caricatures from the source, both showing a kind of loyalty or belief that seems to bypass logic. What does this really mean for us, as people trying to navigate all this information? How did these patterns, whether it's blind devotion to a leader or believing unverified online stuff, how does that impact our ability collectively to think critically today?
That really is the core question, isn't it? And the source makes a pretty powerful point near the end. It says being loyal, say, to your faith or your country, that's fine. But, and this is the quote, loyalty without logic. That's like arguing with a fan, a lot of wind, no direction.
Mm-hmm.
The piece kind of suggests that maybe outrage isn't the answer, but perhaps humor helps, encouraging us to think, to question, maybe laugh a little at the absurdity sometimes.
It really does stress the importance of perspective and engaging critically.
Exactly. Which leads to a big question for you listening right now.
Hmm.
How do these descriptions, blind faith, viral stupidity as the source calls them, how do they challenge your own assumptions? Your assumptions about how you consume information, how you engage in online discussions. How can we, all of us, try to cultivate a bit more logic and maybe a little less outrage in our daily lives and the content we interact with?
Mm.
Maybe, just maybe, it starts with a simple pause before hitting share and asking ourselves, is this really logical or does it just feel good?